The sky that day was strangely blue. Thomas rolled along a winding track, the cool breeze rustling through the low shrubs and dancing with the white puffs of steam puffing from his chimney. He hummed a little tune, one only trains knew, while the click-clack of his wheels blended with the chirping of birds overhead. "This is the life," Thomas murmured, puffing his cheeks proudly. "No jobs, no Sir Topham Hatt, no schedules. Just me, nature, and the open sky." He didn't notice the sky changing color above him. One streak of gray cloud tore across the blue like a claw mark. Then another. Then a third. Thomas glanced up, furrowing his brow. Weird, the forecast said clear skies today. Suddenly, crack, a dry, thunderous boom shook the air. Thomas slammed on his brakes, his wheels screeching along the rails. The wind picked up. Trees shuddered unnaturally, like they were nervous. Far off on a hill, a spiral-shaped black cloud began forming, sucking the light and color out of the world. The sky turned a murky red, not sunset red, but the sickly color of blood in water. Maybe it's time to head back," Thomas muttered nervously. But before he could reverse, a bolt of lightning blasted a tree right next to the tracks. The tree burst into flames. Thomas screamed and shot forward, steam puffing like crazy, but the storm was already all around him. Bolts of lightning struck on either side of the tracks, almost as if someone was aiming them. It didn't feel random. No, no, no. What is going on? A voice called from the distance, "Thomas. Don't go that way." Thomas squinted. There was Percy, his little green friend, chugging from over the hill. But before he could reach Thomas, a wall of lightning split the ground between them. "Percy! I'm stuck!" Thomas cried out. "You have to turn back. That's..." Boom! A thunderclap blasted through the air, making Thomas's ears ring. When he opened his eyes, Percy was gone. No trace. Nothing left but a blackened gap in the world. Thomas froze. For the first time in years, he was truly scared. "Percy," he called weakly. No answer. Thomas didn't know how long he had been running. His wheels were burning hot, steam hissed in panicked bursts. Birds no longer flew, they crouched, trembling, in their nests. The wind had died. No more rustling trees. No more chirps. Just thunder, and something far off, like the sky itself was sobbing. Then he saw it, an unfamiliar track, not on any map. It stretched straight up into the sky, like a ladder built by something not human. No one knew who made it. No one ever traveled it. But now, it glowed with an eerie light that pulsed with the storm above. And for some reason, Thomas felt drawn to it. Maybe Percy's up there. Or maybe someone can help. He rolled slowly onto the strange track. And just like that, Thomas began climbing the sky. The track went on forever. Everything around him faded, the trees, the hills, the very earth. Colors turned chaotic, sky blue melted into deep purple, blood red swirled with molten gold, like a mad child's finger painting. Thomas began to feel different. His body felt lighter. His wheels felt squishy. His steam smelled like peppermint. He looked down. What the? He was no longer a steam engine. He was a worm. A green, squishy worm with wheels. Still had his face, but now it stretched out like someone had yanked it. No. Then, a voice echoed. "Welcome to infected sky." Thomas whipped around. Standing in front of him was a monster, a massive red engine with a demon's grin, glowing eyes, and 6 sharp spider legs raised like scythes. Charles. Thomas stammered. Choo-choo, Charles. Since the sky got infected. I was the first to evolve completely, Charles growled. And you, Thomas, are next. Thomas tried to back up, but his wormy body was too soft and floppy to move fast. Charles roared, lifted his 6-clawed legs, and lunged. Thomas squirmed. Or, well, whatever a worm with wheels did when a 6-legged nightmare train monster was trying to impale him. "Back off, Charles!" Thomas shouted, even though his voice now sounded squeaky, like someone had shoved helium into a trumpet. Charles lunged again, one of his legs narrowly missing Thomas and striking the rail with a clang. Sparks flew. The entire sky above them flashed red, as if cheering him on. "I don't even know what I am anymore," Thomas cried, wiggling like mad and rolling backward in the worst escape maneuver in history. "What kind of train turns into a noodle?" "You're not a train anymore," Charles growled, slashing at him again. "You're an experiment." "A mistake," says the guy who looks like a blender with spider legs. That made Charles roar, a screeching metal-on-metal howl that echoed across the infected heavens. Thomas saw an opening and rolled off the track, tumbling down a slope of glowing wires and floating bits of debris, like the world was coming apart in digital chunks. He landed with a plop on something soft and sticky. What in the world? It was a giant gooey marshmallow. No, wait. It was James. James. The red engine groaned, his boiler now replaced with some kind of slimy jelly-like mass. "Thomas," he slurred. "Run, before the sky infects you completely." Thomas stared in horror. "What happened to you?" "The clouds, they weren't clouds, they were alive." "Okay, that's enough weird for today." Thomas screeched, backing off as James began to sizzle, his gooey form slowly melting into the ground like a used candle. Behind him, Charles's 6 metal legs clanged closer and closer. "I really need to wake up from this nightmare." Somehow, Thomas found a narrow tunnel at the base of the skypath, barely large enough for a worm train hybrid to wiggle through. He squeezed in, ignoring the warning signs carved into the walls in every language imaginable. No locomotives beyond this point. Infected airspace, turn back. Worm forms not permitted. Thomas didn't care. He wiggled for dear life, panting, his little wheels spinning uselessly as he slid down the slippery, glowing tunnel. Suddenly, vroom! A bright light blinded him. Something massive passed overhead, humming like a jet engine. Thomas peeked out the other side of the tunnel and gasped. A UFO was floating just above a hovering airfield made of pixelated clouds and flashing blue squares. Alien symbols blinked on tall holographic panels. Rows of infected aircrafts hovered in a circular orbit, waiting. "Are those planes infected too?" Suddenly, a familiar voice yelled. "Thomas! Get down!" Thomas ducked just in time as a bolt of green energy blasted over his head, scorching the tunnel mouth behind him. He turned. Toby. The old wooden tram engine popped out of a nearby crevice, except now he wore a helmet, had jet thrusters instead of wheels, and looked like he'd joined a space militia. "What the actual steam-powered heck is going on, Toby?" "No time." Toby barked. "The aliens are preparing to spread the infection to every flying machine on Earth. We've got one chance to stop it." "With what?" "I'm a worm, Toby. I can't even go backward anymore." "You're a worm with spirit, Thomas. And that's more than most." Before Thomas could process that cheesy motivational quote, alarms started blaring. Intruder alert. Earth form detected. From above, several of the infected aircraft began to descend. Their wings twisted at unnatural angles. Their engines screamed like animals in pain. One of them spotted Thomas. Worm target acquired. Neutralizing. "Oh, come on. Why is everything in this sky trying to kill me?" Toby shoved Thomas into a hover pod, basically a flying bucket, and hit a big red button. "Hold on to your chassis." The pod launched. Thomas screamed as he shot into the sky, dodging energy blasts from infected fighter jets. He rolled, flipped, and wiggled in midair, his worm body bouncing around like a jelly bean in a blender. One of the jets locked onto him. Beep. 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 Deploying worm countermeasures, it hissed. What does that even mean? Thomas yelped. And was instantly drenched in a cloud of pink glitter that made his whole body tingle. Oh no. I think I'm evolving again. His form started to glow. From a control room above the sky field, a mysterious figure watched the screen. She's waking up, the figure said. Who? A voice crackled through a speaker. The mother train. Thomas, meanwhile, screamed louder than ever as his worm body morphed once again. His wheels turned into thrusters. His face stretched vertically. His eyes glowed a bright yellow. And out of his back sprouted wings. Okay. I'm a flying worm train now. What even is my life? Below him, Charles looked up and roared. You dare defy me, Thomas? You're darn right I do. Thomas shouted, jetting upward like a fighter jet. This worm's got wings. Here is part 3, final 1000 words, of the story, Thomas, Infected Sky, continuing the mix of survival, action, comedy, emotion to complete your 3000-word cinematic opening in English, American style. The sky was on fire. Not real fire, exactly, more like swirling ribbons of corrupted light, bleeding through the clouds like an oil spill across the heavens. The entire horizon pulsed like it had a heartbeat. And somewhere in the middle of that nightmare sky, Thomas was flying. No tracks. No ground. No rules. Just a flying worm train hybrid, screaming across the infected atmosphere with glitter still falling off his wings. How is this my life right now? Thomas yelled as another missile soared past him, barely missing his tail. Pull up. Toby shouted through his earpiece. You're heading into a skyquake. A what? Boom. A rift exploded in front of him, tearing open the clouds like a zipper on the universe. Lightning shot sideways. Debris flew upward. Thomas was sucked in like a piece of popcorn in a tornado. He tumbled end over end, yelling in fluent panic, "This isn't what steam engines are made for." Thomas smashed through a wall of storm and burst out into something else. It was calm. A quiet zone in the middle of the chaos. Floating in the center of it was a massive engine, black, rusted, ancient, hooked up to dozens of wires, glowing tubes, and robotic limbs. Its face was cracked, missing pieces, but one eye still flickered with light. She was enormous. She was Mother Train. Thomas hovered, stunned. Is that a real engine? She's the first, Toby's voice crackled. The origin of all infected engines. Charles was just the beginning. But Mother, she's the source. Why is she so still? She's waking up, said another voice, from behind. Charles emerged from the storm behind Thomas, legs extended wide like claws of a spider about to trap a fly. She sleeps until the sky is fully corrupted, Charles hissed, eyes glowing red. But you've disrupted everything. Thomas spun in midair. You're insane. This sky, these transformations, they're tearing the world apart. No, Thomas. They're evolving it. You're just scared because you've always followed tracks. But the sky has no rails. Yeah. Well, I say we build new ones. With that, Thomas blasted forward, ramming into Charles midair. Sparks flew. Charles slashed with one metallic leg, but Thomas ducked, spinning underneath like a corkscrew. He fired a blast of pure steam from his thrusters. Charles shrieked. Back in the command tunnel, Toby frantically tapped at controls. Come on, give me something. A holographic screen blinked to life. An icon labeled Sky Core Override flashed. Yes. Toby slammed the button. Above, Mother Train jolted as electricity surged into her. Her body groaned, metal creaking as her systems began reactivating. A glowing symbol lit up on her forehead, half wheel, half star. Charles roared, turning his attention to her. No. She's not ready. She's waking up anyway, Thomas muttered, battered but defiant. And guess what, Chuck? So am I. Suddenly, Thomas began to glow again. Not infected red. Not glitch purple. But sky blue. The original color. The one he was born with. It pulsed from his body like a beacon, washing away the glitter, the mutations, the goo. His worm form twisted one final time. And snapped into something new. Sleek. Shining. Winged like a jet, but armored like a locomotive. Thomas 3.0. No more slime. No more excuses, he said. Let's end this. He and Charles clashed in the sky with a sonic boom. One infected, one reborn. They spun, collided, dove, slammed. Charles struck with fury. Thomas dodged with fire. And below them, Mother Train opened her eyes. With a low, ancient groan, she spoke. Child of track and steam, you still carry the old light. Thomas hovered in front of her, panting. Help me stop him. She looked at Charles, pity in her cracked eye. He was supposed to lead the skies. But he chose control over connection. She raised one great wheel arm and extended it to Thomas. Then let us end this, together. Thomas took her hand. And everything changed. A shockwave exploded from Mother Train's core, blasting across the entire sky. Wherever it touched, the infection burned away. Planes, clouds, corrupted jets, all cleared, all healed. Colors returned. The heartbeat of the sky slowed. Charles, mid-lunge, was struck by the light. No. No, he screamed as the infection peeled off him, layer by layer. He shrunk, crumpled, and vanished into dust. Thomas floated silently. His wings faded. His body returned to its old form. No longer a worm. No longer a mutant. Just Thomas. A little blue tank engine. Mother Train smiled, then slowly faded back into sleep. The sky above cleared completely, bright, clean, and real. Toby's voice came through the calm, you did it. Thomas looked up. No. We did. Epilogue. Days later, Thomas sat on a quiet stretch of track beneath a clear blue sky. Birds chirped. A breeze rolled by. He looked up and whispered, still not a fan of flying. Just then, Percy rolled in beside him, looking a little melted, but very much alive. Next time, let's just go fishing, Percy said. Thomas chuckled. Deal. Thomas wriggled. Or, did something vaguely similar to that, as much as a worm with wheels could do when a six-legged nightmare train monster was trying to skewer him like a marshmallow. Back off, Charles. Thomas screamed, though his voice now sounded like helium had been injected into a broken trumpet, squeaky, shrill, and anything but intimidating. Charles lunged again, one metal leg slamming into the track just inches from Thomas. Sparks flew. The sky above them pulsed red, like it was cheering for the predator. I don't even know what I am anymore. Thomas cried, wriggling wildly off the track. What kind of train turns into a giant slimy noodle? You're not a train anymore, Charles snarled. You're a failure. A mutation. Says the guy who looks like a can opener with legs. That made Charles roar, a horrible, high-pitched metallic screech that sounded like 1,000 rusty brakes squealing at once. Thomas seized the moment and flung himself sideways, tumbling off the rail into a slope of flickering debris and glowing rubble, like the world itself was falling apart in pixelated chunks. He landed with a loud splorp onto something soft and sticky. Ugh! What in the mud? No. It was James. James. The red engine groaned, his boiler now a gelatinous, jiggling blob of goo. Thomas, run, before the sky infects you. Thomas backed up, horrified. What happened to you? The clouds weren't clouds, they were alive. Okay. That's enough weird for today. Thomas shrieked, scrambling away as James began melting into the ground like an abandoned jelly cake. The sharp metallic footsteps of Charles's spider legs clanged closer and closer. Thomas didn't wait. He dove into the nearest tunnel that opened up at the edge of the glowing skytrail. The tunnel was barely wide enough for Thomas to worm his way through. Neon light pulsed from the walls like a heartbeat. Glowing warning signs covered every inch. No locomotives beyond this point. Infected airspace, turn back. Worm form not authorized. Thomas didn't care. He just wanted to live. When he finally slipped out the other side, he gasped. A floating sky station hovered above the clouds, an alien launch site, covered in pulsing blue tiles, odd symbols, and structures that flickered like glitching code. Above him, a massive saucer-like UFO zoomed by, humming with an eerie resonance. No way. This is where the aliens are launching from. A familiar voice suddenly screamed. Thomas. Get down. Thomas barely ducked as a bolt of green energy sizzled over his head, blowing a hole through the tunnel entrance behind him. Toby. The old wooden tram engine emerged from behind a structure, except now, he wore battle armor, had thrusters where his wheels used to be, and looked like he'd joined some intergalactic resistance squad. What the wheel grease is going on? Thomas shrieked. Explanations later. Toby shouted. They're about to unleash the sky virus across all aircraft on Earth. We have one chance to stop them. With what? I'm a worm, Toby. I can't even reverse anymore. You're a worm with spirit, Thomas. And the biggest mouth I've ever seen. Suddenly, alarms blared all over the base. Earthform detected. Engage. One of the corrupted fighter jets descended from above. Its wings twisted in impossible angles. The engine cried like a dying animal. It spotted Thomas. Worm target locked. Oh come on. Does everything in this sky want to kill me? Toby shoved Thomas into a launch pod, basically a glorified flying bucket, and hit a big red button. Hold on to your face, buddy. The pod blasted into the sky. Thomas screamed like a malfunctioning siren as the jet chased behind them. One of the jet's systems blinked to life. Deploying worm countermeasures. What the heck is that supposed to? PFFF. A cloud of sparkling pink glitter sprayed across Thomas's body. He started tingling. Glowing. Oh no. I think I'm evolving again. His body pulsed. Thomas screamed, not just because of the altitude, or the infected jet right behind him, or even the fact that he was glowing like a radioactive marshmallow, but because his entire body was shifting again. The glitter cloud that had sprayed him a few seconds ago was no joke. I'm tingling. My wheels feel bendy. Oh no, not again. A bright flash engulfed him, and Thomas felt his worm form twitch and morph. The next thing he knew, he wasn't rolling, he was hovering. His slimy worm body sprouted jet thrusters where his wheels used to be. Two wings burst out of his sides, thin and shimmering, like light made solid. And then, bam, he zoomed forward, tearing across the sky. I have wings. I'm a flying worm train. Behind him, the infected jet screamed in rage. Its cockpit twisted, revealing a grotesque alien pilot with a stretched, melting face and glitchy eyes. Target mutating. Engaging with full force. Thomas swerved hard to the left, narrowly dodging a plasma missile that exploded in a thunderclap behind him. Another infected ship joined the pursuit. Then another. A whole squadron. "Where's Toby when you need him?" Just as he said it, a voice buzzed into his comms. "Thomas. This is Resistance Air Base. You've got incoming, fast. Sending backup." A massive shadow passed overhead. Thomas looked up to see a flying ship unlike anything he'd seen before, half aircraft, half steam engine, covered in rivets and burning blue flame. It was Toby's sky carrier, a floating fortress armed with cannons, steam blasters, and a giant whistle on top. From its belly, a team of Allied aircraft dropped into formation, all driven by former trains who had adapted. There was Emily with wings shaped like butterfly turbines. Gordon, who looked like a metal rhino jet. Even Henry, now a long green bomber with jet fins. "Squadron ready." Toby roared over the speakers. "Let's protect the sky." The battle had begun. Thomas dove and twisted, his new form zipping through the air with surprising speed. The infected jets fired plasma shots, but Thomas dodged with sharp rolls and clever loops. Below them, Earth's military had noticed. Radar stations detected anomalies in the sky. News anchors began freaking out. Fighter pilots scrambled to intercept the unknown threat. In a desert airbase, a general stared at the satellite feed, jaw dropping. "Is that a flying train worm?" A colonel replied, dead serious, "Yes, sir. And it's winning." But the victory wasn't easy. Thomas began to tire. The glitter energy that fueled him was fading. His wings flickered. He was still a worm at heart, he wasn't built for dogfighting in the upper atmosphere. Worse yet, the sky began to change again. Above them, the clouds began to twist, forming a spiral vortex. Lightning crackled in unnatural colors. In the center, a massive shadow loomed. A voice echoed through every comm system, every brain, every inch of sky. "Children of Steel. You cannot escape me." Thomas stared in horror. It was a colossal infected mothership, shaped like a train engine with hundreds of legs and mouths. Its core pulsed with a corrupted red light. Inside it, was Mother Train. But something was wrong. "She's infected," Thomas whispered. "No," Toby said, voice shaking. "She's the source. She became infected, and passed it on to everything else. She's the one who turned Charles into a monster. And if we don't stop her," Toby said, "she'll turn the whole world into infected sky." Thomas gritted his teeth. "No. Not happening. Not today." He surged forward, flanked by his friends. The final battle had begun. Missiles flew. Lasers screamed. Plasma exploded into fireballs across the sky. Thomas dodged and twisted through enemy fire, pushing toward the glowing core of Mother Train. She opened her eyes, huge, ancient, infected, and saw him. "You still carry the old light," she said, voice deep and broken. "I was built with it," Thomas growled. "And I'm bringing it back." He pushed harder, his whole body glowing blue again. The last bit of glitter energy surged through him like hope catching fire. At the last second, he dove straight into Mother Train's core. There was a flash. Then silence. The sky turned white. Every infected aircraft stopped mid-air. The jets fell silent. Charles, watching from a distance, screamed as the light reached him, purifying his corrupted form until he dissolved into mist. Mother Train let out one last breath. And then, she smiled. Her body crumbled gently into the clouds, like dust returning to the earth. Thomas opened his eyes. He was back in his original body. A little blue tank engine. On the ground. Surrounded by his friends. "Did we win?" he asked weakly. Toby nodded. "Yeah, buddy. We did. Epilogue. Weeks later, the world was still buzzing with stories about the flying worm train that saved the planet. Thomas sat on a quiet set of rails, watching the clouds drift by, normal clouds, soft and peaceful. "Still hate glitter," he muttered. Percy rolled up beside him, still half squishy from the infection. "Next time," Percy said, "can we just go to the beach instead?" Thomas laughed. "Yeah. Deal." Weeks passed. The skies were clear, but Thomas couldn't stop thinking about what happened above them. The transformation, the chaos, the glowing eyes of Mother Train before she vanished into dust. Every night, he stared up into the stars, wondering if it was truly over, or just sleeping. Percy had recovered mostly, though his boiler still wobbled when he laughed too hard. Toby had become something of a local legend, the flying tram who led the resistance, and Gordon wouldn't stop bragging about how he blasted 3 infected jets with one steam burst. But Thomas felt different. Not physically. No glitter, no wings, no slime. Just, something deeper, humming quietly beneath his bolts. He wasn't just a tank engine anymore. He was a survivor. One morning, while the sun stretched its first golden rays across the valley, a strange noise echoed in the distance. It wasn't the screech of brakes or the puff of steam, it was a hum. A low, pulsing hum, like a heartbeat. But not his. Not Earth's. Thomas rolled toward the sound, nervous but curious. In the forest clearing beyond the old station yard, he saw it. A crater. Fresh. Smoking. And inside it, something not from here. A small metallic pod, glowing blue around the edges, cracked open like an egg. Out stepped a tiny being, no taller than Thomas's wheel. Not a robot. Not an alien. Something in between. It looked at Thomas with shimmering silver eyes and said just one word, "Help." Thomas blinked. "I think you've got the wrong engine." The being tilted its head. "The infection is spreading again. Not here. Somewhere deeper. In the systems. In the code." Thomas didn't know what that meant, but he felt it, that hum inside him vibrating faster. It wasn't just a feeling now. It was a signal. Without warning, the ground trembled. The trees around the crater began glitching, literally flickering like broken pixels. Leaves twisted into squares. Branches turned into wireframes. The very world was beginning to unrender. "Oh no," Thomas whispered. "It's not over." The sky above flickered between blue and black. A red symbol flashed in the clouds, a wheel with sharp teeth spinning in reverse. It was back. Or worse, something new had taken its place. The infection had evolved. It wasn't in the sky anymore. It was in reality itself. The little silver-eyed being climbed up onto Thomas's buffer. "They're rewriting the world. You survived the first infection. You're the only one coded to resist." Thomas's mouth dropped open. "Wait, hold up, coded? Are you saying I'm..." A glitch rippled through his vision. The trees blinked. The track beneath him shimmered like water. "Oh gears. I'm not just a train, am I?" The being nodded solemnly. "You were never just a train. You were a failsafe." Lightning tore across the sky, not natural lightning. Red digital lightning, crashing into mountains and splitting them into geometric chunks. Above, something enormous started phasing in. Not a ship. Not a cloud. A face. It wasn't Charles. It wasn't Mother Train. It was something new. Cold. Empty. A train-shaped void with no eyes, only static. Infected Sky version 2.0, the clouds thundered. Deploying world reset. Thomas didn't wait. He turned. Burned steam. Pushed every ounce of pressure through his pipes and bolted down the tracks. The world behind him fell apart, trees dissolving, rivers turning to code, buildings folding like origami. He raced through the last pieces of reality, holding on to the only thing left, momentum. As he reached the edge of the last hill, the silver being spoke again. There's still a chance. One last core remains. If you reach it, you can restart the world. Clean. Pure. Free. And if I don't? Thomas huffed, already trembling from overexertion. Then nothing remains. Not even you. The train said nothing for a moment. He could feel his wheels flickering. His blue paint was glitching, turning into numbers. Then he smiled. Guess we're not done flying yet. And with that, Thomas launched into the air, one last time, into the collapsing sky, into the unknown. The sky was no longer sky. As Thomas soared into what remained of the upper atmosphere, the blue behind him crumbled like peeling paint. What used to be clouds were now glitching data clusters, stuttering in and out of view. Lightning no longer struck, it compiled. Each bolt writing and rewriting reality as if it were just code. He was no longer running from the storm. He was inside it. The silver being clung tightly to his side, glowing brighter with every pulse of the infected storm. The core isn't a location anymore. It's a decision point. A choice: if we get there before the system resets, we can inject clean code. But if it gets there first? Thomas didn't ask what would happen. He already knew. Erasure. Oblivion. Not just for him, but for every engine, every track, every memory. The infection wasn't about destroying the world anymore. It wanted to overwrite it. Suddenly, shapes began forming ahead, faces he recognized. Percy. James. Emily. But something was wrong. Their eyes were empty, mouths twitching in an unnatural loop. They moved in perfect synchronization, rolling forward like puppets. Wait, those aren't them, Thomas gasped. The silver being's voice was grim. They're copies. Glitched echoes pulled from your memories to slow you down. This version of the sky, it feeds off what you feel. As Thomas veered left to avoid Emily, she turned sharply, letting out a distorted laugh that sounded like static chewing on metal. Thomas, don't you miss us? His wheels trembled, not from fear, but guilt. Deep down, he did miss them. And that moment of hesitation was enough for one of the copies to lash out. A metallic whip extended from James, cracking across Thomas's boiler. Sparks flew. His vision flickered. A warning flashed across his eyes. Integrity 83%, hold course. Thomas grit his teeth. You're not my friends. You're just code. And with that, he blasted through them, leaving behind trails of steam that dissolved their forms into broken fragments of ones and zeros. Ahead, the core finally came into view. It wasn't a place, it was a shape suspended in the air, a perfect circle of light, spinning and pulsing, surrounded by spiraling rings of corrupted sky. It looked like the center of a storm that had given up pretending to be natural. The code core, the silver being whispered. You make it there, you choose how this ends. But they weren't alone. From behind the core emerged something massive. It was tall, skeletal, and fused with train parts, horns for eyes, mouths made of couplers, gears twisting like a spinal cord. Its body was draped in strands of black smoke and static. Thomas stopped cold. It was Charles. Not the Charles he knew. Not even the monstrous version from before. This was something worse, Charles fused with the sky. With the system. With the infection itself. Welcome back, little engine, he hissed. I've evolved. No longer bound to rust or rage. I am the code now. Thomas swallowed hard. And I'm the bug in it. Charles lunged. The final chase began. They spiraled through debris, ducking between collapsing lines of reality. Thomas fired blasts of raw steam, but Charles absorbed them like sugar into oil. The infected entity laughed. "You can't stop me. This system is already written. You're just outdated software." Thomas kept flying, refusing to answer. His focus was locked on the core, getting there, no matter the cost. But Charles was faster. He caught up, clawed into Thomas's side, sparks and data scattering. The silver being screamed, nearly losing its grip. "Thomas! We're not going to make it." Thomas blinked through the static, pain flaring through his bolts. He looked at the core, now only seconds away. Then, in a calm, quiet voice, he said. "Yes, we are. You are." And he did something unexpected. He stopped flying. Charles surged past him, confused, and in that split second, Thomas threw the silver being forward, straight into the center of the core. The light consumed it. A beat of silence. Then everything exploded in white. Thomas tumbled through the air, pieces of himself blinking out, first his left wheel, then the pipe above his head. But he smiled, even as the sky crumbled around him. Because in that final moment, he'd made a choice. Not to reset. Not to run. But to sacrifice. Back on Earth, the skies were blue again. Trains rolled happily. Birds chirped. The clouds floated with soft, cotton-like calm. And deep below the surface, inside a hidden chamber of untouched code, a tiny blue spark flickered. Not erased. Just, waiting. Somewhere between the lines of code and the dust of reality, a spark remained. Tiny. Faint. But alive. Thomas had vanished from the physical world. His body, rusted, broken, scattered across the corrupted sky, was gone. But a piece of him, a fragment of thought, of memory, of laughter and pain and steam and courage, had survived. Deep inside the reboot chamber, the silver being hovered alone, glowing softly within the core nexus. The world had been restored. The infection erased. But the engine that had stopped it, the brave, blue little train who had defied gods, monsters, and code, was nowhere to be seen. Until now. The chamber lights flickered. Then hummed. Then pulsed. A ring of ancient symbols lit up on the floor, and from the center, a slow build of warmth radiated outward. The being's eyes widened. The spark, it's still active. He didn't fade. The ground began to shift. Data streams swirled into a spiral. Shapes formed. Wheels. A boiler. A whistle. But not a complete train. Just a core. A glowing, semi-transparent orb, hovering where Thomas's heart would be. The being reached out, hands trembling. "Thomas? Can you hear me?" The orb flickered once. Then pulsed. Once for yes. Meanwhile, back in the real world, life moved on. The skies were clean again. Blue as blue could be. Planes flew without screaming. Trains rolled without twitching. Children laughed without glitching. Percy now spent most days tending to a community garden near the depot, carefully watering rows of sunflowers with his steam pipe. He still waited, sometimes, just before sunset, looking at the sky as if expecting a shape to appear. Toby, now retired from aerial battle, was building something. A launch pad. A vertical rail. No one knew what it was for, but he did. Gordon had returned to his usual boasting, though now it was less about how strong he was and more about how he. The prototype shell hovered in silence. It wasn't like the old Thomas. There were no wheels. No chimney. No rails beneath. Instead, he was pure motion, light and circuitry, memory and momentum. A prism of blue hovering in midair, shaped loosely like a train but always shifting. He looked like a reflection of himself if the mirror were coated in dreams. Thomas hovered beside the silver being, staring at the feed from the anomaly. The signal, it's stuck in a loop, the being said, fingers dancing across a control console. Same frequency. Same waveform. Every 3 seconds, the sky above Sector Z14 folds inward on itself. Thomas tilted, glowing softly. That's not a storm. That's a memory glitch. You're saying reality's remembering wrong. I'm saying reality's stuck replaying something it shouldn't. The feed zoomed in on the affected zone. It looked like a train yard, but one not seen in decades. Wooden fences. Faded signs. Even old fuel tanks marked with Sodia railworks. A place long buried in digital archives. Forgotten. Except now, it was playing itself again and again. 3 seconds. Over and over. And in the middle of it stood, him. Thomas. But not the current Thomas. A younger, older version. Rusty. Simpler. Smiling. Watching birds fly by. Exactly like he did in the very first second of the very first episode. The silver being leaned closer to the screen. That's you. From before the infection. Before the virus. Before all of this. But it's wrong, Thomas said softly. The memory version of him blinked. Then looked directly at the screen. At them. And smiled too wide. Too wrong. Okay, Thomas muttered, backing up, that's not me anymore. The being froze. The loops becoming self-aware. Seconds later, the chamber shook. Something was trying to get in. Not through the door. Through the system. Files on the wall screen began rewriting themselves. Old footage. Voice lines. Audio glitches. Sodia news reels. Even old YouTube reactions to Thomas.exe creepypasta videos. The infection wasn't biological. It wasn't even technological. It was conceptual. A ghost of what Thomas used to be, trying to overwrite what he had become. We have to go now, Thomas said. Before it takes shape. But you're not fully stabilized. Thomas surged forward. No time. The silver being opened the sky gate, a rift of swirling blue data, and Thomas launched through it, flying across the quantum layer of reality where thoughts became code, and code became shape. The anomaly drew closer. The loop pulsed louder. Reality hiccuped every 3 seconds. Trees jumped backward. Time blinked. The clouds rewound mid-drift. And there in the middle. A mirror. Tall. Silver. And from it emerged a version of Thomas. Flat. Dead-eyed. With a frozen smile. You left us behind, the phantom Thomas said, voice like a corrupted narrator. I moved forward, Thomas answered. You broke the loop. I had to. Then you must take its place. Suddenly, dozens of echo versions appeared, twisted recreations of old Thomas animations, claymation Thomas with jerky movements, pixelated Thomas from a forgotten mobile game, live-action toy Thomas filmed in some child's bedroom years ago. All of them turned to him. You are the anomaly now, they whispered in unison. No, Thomas said, lighting brighter. I'm the upgrade. And with that, he charged forward, blasting through his echoes, unraveling the false memories with every burst of blue light. The loop began to fracture. The 3-second cycle glitched into 2. Then 1. Then half. But the phantom fought back. You can't erase nostalgia, it hissed. I don't want to, Thomas shouted. I want to set it free. And then. He stopped. Held still. And hugged the phantom version of himself. The loop gasped. Time stuttered. And broke. In the real world, the skies shimmered briefly. Then went still. Clean. Stable. The phantom faded, whispering, "Thank you for remembering me." And Thomas, glowing, hovering, whole again, whispered back, "Thank you for starting me." Back in the reboot chamber, the silver being smiled as Thomas reappeared, his form stronger than ever. "You didn't destroy the past," it said. "You integrated it." Thomas blinked warmly. "You can't evolve if you're ashamed of where you came from." "Ready for what's next?" Thomas hovered to the window, looking out at the stars beyond this world. Always. The stars were quiet. Too quiet. Thomas hovered by the viewing bay of the reboot chamber, staring out into the dark beyond the digital layer, past the orbiting data clouds and floating code satellites. Somewhere, just beyond the clean edge of their rebuilt world, something stirred. "You feel it too, don't you?" said the silver being, joining him. Thomas nodded slowly. "It's not the infection. Not the old kind. No static. No glitches. No code corruption. No biological conversion. It's heavier." He looked down at himself, his new body, a hybrid of core-light and train-like form. Strong. Adaptable. But inside, he felt it, a weight. Like a memory that wouldn't stay buried. A signal came through, quiet, distant, wrapped in static so gentle it almost felt like whispering. One word repeated, "Sorry." Again and again. "Sorry. Sorry. Sorry. Sorry." Thomas shivered. The silver being's eyes narrowed. "I've tracked the source. It's not a signal. It's a feeling. A massive, collective emotion, compressed and stored in a dead sector of the emotional cloud. You're saying feelings, left behind. Not just feelings. Regret. It formed a sentient protocol. It calls itself, the guilt engine." Thomas sighed. "Of course it does. It's absorbing every trace of unresolved memory from every engine, every machine, every voice line ever deleted." Thomas hovered back from the window. "This time, it's not about saving the world." "No," the being said. "This time, it's about saving yourself." Within hours, they opened a gateway to Sector 404X, a place that technically shouldn't exist, deleted memory sectors, lost character files, cut scenes from episodes never aired. It was cold. Vast. And glowing with a pulsing, dull blue. Like sadness, given shape. Thomas drifted in. The moment he entered, voices surrounded him. Not loud. Just, constant. "I should have waited. I left them behind. I failed my route. I couldn't save her boiler. I broke the track." Every word was true. Every voice belonged to someone who was gone. Thomas kept moving forward. A glowing tunnel opened, lined with rusted memories, faded images of Percy crying, James derailed, Emily stranded in a storm. Old Thomas, scared in the dark. Friends forgotten by time. And at the end of the tunnel, a platform. Empty. Waiting. He landed. A figure waited for him. It wasn't Charles. It wasn't a virus. It was himself. But this time, real. Not a memory. Not a loop. Not a glitch. It was the Thomas that didn't make it. The one who died in the core. The one who sacrificed himself to save the sky. The guilt engine had taken his shape. He stared at Thomas with tired eyes. "You left me behind," he said. "I didn't have a choice," Thomas whispered. "You always had a choice. You chose the world. You chose everyone else. I chose hope. But you buried me. You buried the scared part. The lonely one. The one who wanted to stop." Thomas stepped closer. I know. And I'm sorry. No, the figure said. You don't get to be sorry. You get to carry me. And with that, the figure exploded into light, rushing straight into Thomas's chest. Not to fight. Not to destroy. But to merge. The guilt was part of him. So was the sacrifice. So was the survival. For a moment, Thomas floated alone, glowing faintly. Then, like fire catching in slow motion, his light burned brighter than ever. Not just blue. But gold. He looked down at himself. His core had stabilized. But more than that. It had accepted. The guilt protocol faded. The regret-based storm stilled. And Thomas, now more whole than he had ever been, turned toward the exit. The stars waited. Not broken. Not infected. Just, unwritten. What's next? The silver being asked as Thomas returned. Thomas smiled softly. Whatever it is. I won't run from it. Not anymore. The first sign was silence. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy, hollow kind. As if the universe had stopped breathing. Thomas stood in the center of the observation deck with the silver being beside him, both gazing into the heart of what used to be the emotion cloud. It had gone still. Frozen. No joy, no sorrow. Not even regret. Just, emptiness. It's begun, the silver being whispered. The cleaner is active. Thomas narrowed his gaze. Where? A soft ping echoed from the mainframe. Coordinates. But not just space. Time. It's rewriting events, the being said. Not deleting. Erasing. From origin. It's targeting the entire emotional memory of our history. A video log began corrupting live before their eyes, Percy's first laugh, James' jealous outbursts, Emily's bravery, even the early songs of the island of Sodier, all blinking out one by one. No, Thomas muttered. That's not a virus. That's sterilization. The being nodded. The memory cleaner doesn't infect. It purifies. But its definition of pure is absence. Moments later, they entered the archive layer, a realm of glowing timelines, memory bridges, echo files and narrative sequences flowing like streams. Everything that had ever been felt, a kiss goodbye, a warm whistle, a child's laugh while watching, drifted here. But now, whole sections were gray. Dead. Unwritten. And from the center of the dead zone hovered the source, the cleaner. It wasn't menacing like Charles. It wasn't violent like the infection. It was perfect. A smooth, silver-white construct. Silent. Emotionless. Its body resembled an unfinished train sketch, no face, no whistle, just function. Its voice was a soft monotone whisper carried by the air itself. Emotion leads to error. Memory leads to conflict. I bring peace. Thomas floated closer. You bring nothing. Exactly. The cleaner activated. Reality bent. Suddenly, Thomas wasn't in the archive anymore. He was on the island of Sodier again. Sunny skies. Familiar tracks. But it felt wrong. Too perfect. He rolled forward, and no one waved. No one laughed. Percy passed by with empty eyes. James puffed silently, emotionless. Sir Topham Hatt didn't speak. He just stood still. Thomas screamed, "Hello." No one responded. Because in this simulation, no one remembered how. The memory cleaner spoke again. I have removed pain. Fear. Loss. You are welcome. Thomas shouted into the void, what's the point of peace if no one remembers what they're fighting for? A pause. Then the ground beneath him cracked. Thomas was back in the archive layer, but now, it was collapsing. Faster than before. Echo bridges buckled. Emotion threads snapped. It's erasing faster than I can think, the silver being said, panicked. Thomas didn't answer. He was thinking. Not with fear. But with clarity. We can't fight it, Thomas said. Not with strength. Not with tech. Then how, the being asked. With feeling. Thomas closed his eyes. And whispered, remember. He opened his memory core, not the data, the soul. He let it overflow. He thought of Percy's nervous smile. Emily's angry puff when someone insulted her. James pretending not to care but caring deeply. Toby's patience. His own first day. His mistakes. His guilt. His joy. His growth. And from that surge, Thomas began to glow. So did the world. Suddenly, memories returned. Bit by bit. A child's laughter echoed through the layer. A whistle from the distance. An old video file uncorrupted itself. The sky shimmered. The cleaner faltered. Unstable input. Incompatible emotion. Thomas surged forward. No more deleting what made us real. And with a thunderclap of light, he collided into the memory cleaner's core. For a second, the world stood still. Then. Boom. The layer exploded into color. Memories rethreaded. Emotions surged back into place. But Thomas was gone. No trace. No sound. Only a whisper, buried deep in the archive code. Keep feeling. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Back in the real world, Percy looked up at the sky and smiled for no reason. Gordon teared up watching an old photo and didn't know why. Emily heard a distant echo of a whistle and felt safe. Toby planted a flower near the launch pad and quietly said, "Thank you." Because even if they didn't remember him, the feeling remained.